We are talking to Mark Fletcher in Montreal, who is the president and CEO of Globalla. And we're going to find out what's going on in Montreal, what does Globalla actually normally sell, and what's the shift. So tell us first, what is Globalla?
Globalla is a company that was really founded in the private brand for clothing and various accessories category. And about 2/3 of our business is socks, hosiery, and legwear product. And we've had a connectivity to health and wellness a little bit with compression socks or socks for diabetics. But we have a core business that's really in the fashion field. But obviously, with the changes that have been happening globally in the last couple of months, we've continue that side of our business, but we have moved heavily into the PPE space.
And so what are you making? You're making gowns?
We're making a variety of items. We are making 3-ply disposable masks. We're making KN95 respirators, which is the Chinese standard for what is known as an N95, but the standard in China is referred to as KN95 with a GB 2626 compliance level. In Europe, that standard is known as EN 149 compliance standard, and it's known as an FFP2 respirator device in Europe. We're also making face shields or visors, as they're referred to. We are making gowns up to level 3 gowns, which is a certain level of protection for a barrier type product. And we are making principally nitrile gloves in the kind of rubber glove category, if you like, or an examination glove. We're making nitrile examination gloves. And there are a couple other things that we are doing, but that's principal. Those are the highest volume items that we are sourcing and selling.
So was that an easy shift to just go from what you were doing to such a different product?
Well, we have an office in China, and a lot of the process for validating supply chain, meaning factories, the compliance standards, their quality assurance practices with complete transparency is something that we do in our everyday business. It's not really the same order of magnitude around health-related things, but even for little kids' socks, there are global standards in terms of testing and laws because those socks end up in kids' mouths and can become a health risk. So, but notwithstanding that, the health kind of measures, working with independent third-party testing facilities to validate product for the quality of the product, but also the quality of the materials. And in this case, barrier filtration efficiency and other important metrics for masks and respirators. The process is identical to what we do for most other types of our products.
And are you finding that, like what we're hearing is that there were some shipments coordinated to come to Canada from China that were sitting maybe at the docks or getting ready to be shipped by air to Canada, and then they were sold to someone else. This pathway, the supply chain pathway, have you been intercepted at all or experienced any?
No, we haven't. I mean, I think a lot of the frenzy, particularly in the surge weeks, in the past number of weeks, where there's been huge demand and a lot of fear from the observation that our company has had talking to people in a variety of jurisdictions in around the world. There's been a lot of panic, and I think that it seems as if some people were so motivated to position themselves to try and intercept some of these shipments, and it sounds like some of them, really happened. I think what has happened in general in supply chains is that there have been bad actors that have infiltrated and caused problems reputationally for China as an exporter of PPE, but also just in terms of general business practices. So like the problem is the time compression and the speed with which this product has been required. That has meant that there have been companies that have issued purchase orders, tried to buy product, or tried ways to circumvent what a normal lead time would be to be able to get product more rapidly. And I think as a result, you're reading headlines where there's been a lot of product delivered that is substandard, which means it's putting either healthcare workers or other people using this protective gear, putting their health at risk. And it's something that we've been obsessed about. Before we started buying or bringing in any product from China, we spent a lot of time with Canadian-based attorneys understanding compliance, regulation, and standards vis-a-vis Health Canada, but also in the United States. We have a Washington, D.C.-based counsel in a group that essentially focuses on FDA compliance and regulations, just to ensure that we were acting properly.
How have hospitals found out that you're bringing it in? Are you connecting with all sorts of?
Yeah, so healthcare, hospitals, governmental state officials, U.S. Homeland Security, healthcare. The hospital management system in the U.S. is a little bit different than what we have in Canada, in that they have operating and third-party operators that either own or manage, and at the very least manage procurement for several thousand hospitals in various groupings. So there are companies like that we're dealing with, but we are dealing in the healthcare world, but we're also dealing in just the corporate world, where there are restaurants that are preparing for their economies to be reopened, and they need to equip their staff. There's a lot of corporate interest and procurement people interested in buying product just to be able to protect their own staff and employees.
And tell us about what Montreal is like and Quebec. It's had a bit of a rougher ride dealing with COVID-19.
Yes, I guess I'm certainly not an expert, but just as somebody that lives near downtown Montreal, it's in our local media every day, all the time. We have a very significant number of cases here right now that's well into the 30,000s. And I think, one thing that is being mentioned by our premier on a regular basis is the high proportion of cases that have come from our senior and nursing home residents. So they're called CHSLDs here in Quebec. It's been a sad situation where there's been a lot of fatalities, and the prevalence of the virus throughout those senior and nursing homes has been very high, and a very high percentage of our total number of cases. So, it affects, like all communities, it affects all aspects of our life, and concerns around, when the economy can be reopened. And obviously there's pressure to reopen the economy here, like there is, I think, in a number of other places, and it's a hotly debated topic right now. And the trouble that everybody is facing is the fact that there appears to be so much information that is not concrete and not known as pure fact at this point. And it's that struggle and balance against having a stalled economy that is creating a lot of pressure here in Quebec and in other economies. So we're only hoping, for the sake of everybody here, that we begin to. We're not at a point. I think it was stated previously in Quebec that they felt that they were flattening out the curve, but I think in the last couple of days they've had to comment on the fact that, in fact, that was a momentary thought that they have, and it's not, and it's continued. And we have become closer to the maximum number of bed capacities that we have in Quebec.
Let's talk about the possibility of an after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think your business will your business continue in the PPE zone, or do you think you'll go back? What's your
Paige, it's very hard to know whether we'll continue in PPE. What I think will happen over time is global capacity will increase with people that have had scale and that are currently scaling up in the production of PPE, who have likely come from the medical supply sector to begin with. And notwithstanding that, I think from all of the experts that we're paying attention to, I think we'll be using PPE for some period of time until there is a vaccine or cure or some type of treatment, and people are going to need to be protected or protect them from spreading any contagion that they might have, which is essentially the purpose of the 3-ply disposable mask. It's hard to know. We're trying to manage the business in a way that is really protection and quality focused, and we're paying attention to pricing on a daily basis. If there's a way to make a sustainable business out of it based on the level of investment we made to become as knowledgeable as we are around PPE products, then we will do that and be licensed on a long-term basis, not just in the short-term basis that has been allowing more companies to import PPE into various regions, which government jurisdictions have allowed for this crisis. So we would be interested in pursuing it if there is a sustainable business for a period of time. But in terms of our core business, I think a lot of our business are basics that are consumed. A lot of people are wearing socks day in and day out, and they'll be consuming them now. It's sort of like a cozy home item to wear. We also have a cold weather accessory division for scarves, hats, and toques. So we are making bandana type masks for fashion retailers and brands that are really they're not medically certified, but they are a form of like a face covering of sorts, which appear to be in high demands with our retailers and the brands that we currently do business with. So how that'll morph over time remains to be seen. My wish and desire would be that we don't need that anymore, and we'll find another way to sell other fashion accessories. But for the time being, we're trying to focus on what the needs are going to be in the marketplace.
What will you take away as your silver lining in all this?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, we've all been cooped up at home with our families and kids and dogs and what have you. So I think it's been a great ride from a family life perspective that we wouldn't otherwise have been on. We joke that, every once in a while we think that maybe we're going to list the kids on Kijiji when the cabin fever gets too high, but mostly that's a joke, and it's been a great experience. Yeah. So really the family togetherness has been great. But I think the other thing that is, has really become clear on this is just how much at risk our whole life and lifestyle, our health and safety, and our economic well-being, how vulnerable it appears to be, and how we frame the thinking around that will be something to reflect on in the months and years ahead, I think.